Red light. All right, and we are live. Welcome everybody to the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova. I've got with me the one and only Xbox All In. He's a good friend of mine. Excellent YouTube channel. Make sure you go subscribe to his channel. Everything is down in the links below. Xbox All In, my fellow brother out here in Hawaii. Let's go ahead and tell people who you are.
Yeah, man. Hey, great to be here on the Kasanova Podcast, dude. I've been following your channel for a while, not just because we're friends, man. It's for the content you provide. I just want to say, man, congratulations. There are videos, and you have definitely blown up. Been watching your podcast, man. Some of the people that you've been getting on the podcast that I've seen so far, amazing, dude. Good job, continued success, and it is a pleasure to be here, man. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm really honored to have you on the podcast, man. We've known each other for years,
right?
And man, I remember back when the Xbox One launched, and we were there at the launch event. That was crazy.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, we do, and that's actually the first time I've been to midnight events, just like yourself.
Yeah.
But I had never seen a midnight event like that with Microsoft, man. There was like so much swag that they were giving out.
It was crazy.
It was crazy, yeah. Especially for Hawaii, man. That was actually, big ups for Microsoft for that, dude.
Definitely. Like they really went all out. But yeah, man, we're gonna go ahead and get into some of these topics here. Like, so one of the first ones I want to talk about, like, so people can get like a background, like what's your history and background with gaming? Like what got you into it? What are what was like your favorite console? I know like your Twitter feed is Sega Forever, so I know you love Sega.
Yeah, huge Sega fan, yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and let people know.
Yeah, so what I like to do when they ask me, and my age kind of shows, but I'm an old school gamer.
Mm-hmm.
I've been gaming since the arcade days, man, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth on it, dude. In fact, when I was growing up for those of you guys who know, in Hawaii, there's a place called Haleiwa, and the first video game I played was a local barbershop there, and they had Mooncrester and Galaxian. And after I played those two games, man, I was eternally hooked. And I've been doing this my whole life, man. I used to call it a hobby, but now I call it a lifestyle. And like you, man, as we came up with all the different consoles, with all the arcades, all the games in the arcades, man, we're kind of old souls in that sense. And then eventually I would actually find Sega. That's why my, like you said, my call sign is a Sega Forever. And that's my gamer tag also on Xbox, if you guys want to hit me up, and we can play some games sometimes. But that's the first time I became kind of a fanboy. Before that, I was just a gamer like anybody else. And I still maintain being a gamer, but Sega was the first time that I saw something that I really could attach to. And that comes from the arcade too, man, because I used to play a lot of their games in the arcades. That's what they're known for, was actually their arcade games. And then when they started developing home consoles and stuff, of course, with the Genesis, that came to the U.S. And then ever since the Genesis, man, I've been playing ever since. From the Genesis to the Saturn, I even had the 32X, man. I had the Sega CD. Anything that Sega put out, I would buy. But like you, man, I watch your channel that you do a lot of multi-console stuff, and I am the same way, or I used to be. And that's where we can kind of get into the Xbox stuff. It's like what you wanted to talk about on this podcast. I actually became an Xbox fan and consumer, man. It's because Sega's no longer around, at least in the terms that I remember them, and the way I used to actually enjoy their product was when they actually used to be a developer and a publisher, and they used to be a console maker as well. So once those days were gone, I was just kind of playing whatever games I wanted to play. And then Microsoft came along, and ever since the first time I played Halo, man, that's what got me hooked.
Yeah, definitely. I would say like the original Xbox, at least for me, because I was huge on the Sega Dreamcast. And when Sega killed off the Dreamcast, I believe it was 2001. And then when the original Xbox came out, to me, I felt like the Xbox was Dreamcast too, especially with the amount of support that Sega threw at them.
Right. Yeah, you're not the only one, man. I mean, and I know Microsoft was helping on the Dreamcast as well. They used to have the Windows logo on the back of the Dreamcast. I think they did the operating system, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you're not the only one that says that, dude. A lot of people feel that way. And that's why a lot of Sega guys kind of, it was easy for them to step over to the Xbox, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like having Halo at the launch, I mean, that really just set the the standard for, I feel like, all the shooters of current gen, even though you could trace it back to, the original Doom and Wolfenstein, or you can go as far as like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. But I really feel like modern shooters took almost all of their cues from Halo and just went with it.
Yeah, to me, what struck me the most about Halo, because like I said, I wasn't really an Xbox guy, and if you remember, when Xbox was deciding to make a console, get into the console market, a lot of people was clowning them.
Yeah.
A lot of people were saying that that's just their way to get Windows into the living room. But the thing that I found interesting the most about Xbox was it became kind of a cultural phenomenon, at least from what I remember. Because like I said, I was not Xbox at all at the time. I had Nintendo, PlayStation, and definitely the Sega systems, and that's what I played. Now when Xbox came out, I was looking at getting it just because I'm a gamer. That's how a lot of us used to be. But I wasn't prepared for the experience that Halo, at least for me, when I first played it. I didn't play shooters. I was basically, these are the games I played. I played platformers, right? I played sports games, right? Tecmo Bowl, Joe Montana football. Was never good at Madden, but since everybody played it, I played it. NHL 17. I basically stuck within my genres. I could play a lot of different games, but there were particular games that I played, and that changed though when I actually played the Xbox and I actually played Halo for the first time. And that's the first time I was exposed to a shooter on that level.
Yeah. I think before, like, especially in the 90s, before they started calling them first-person shooters, I believe they used to call them corridor shooters or something like that. And it was primarily a genre that was almost exclusively on PC. And you had your rare exceptions like Daikatana on 64 and was it Turok 1, 2, and 3, and then Rage Wars and whatnot. But you didn't really have it to the extent that it is like until like the Xbox. And I think what was the other shooter that was popular that came out after Halo was Time Splitters, which I'm still waiting for a fourth installment in that series.
Yeah, that was actually cool.
But yeah, man.
I think the thing that got me too about Halo, that a lot of people don't give it credit for, is the controller. Because I remember people were saying, especially because most shooters, like you said, were on PC, right? And then trying to put a game that has shooting mechanics onto a console was thought impossible because of the controller. The controller was a limiting factor. In fact, you remember when the Dreamcast would do a couple of their Phantasy Star Online and stuff like that, they actually came with the keyboard and the mouse.
Yeah.
But it was never thought that you could do that on a console, and Halo was the first game to actually do that, which I thought was really cool. And you wouldn't have your Call of Duties and you wouldn't have all these other games if it wasn't for that first Halo game, and that they were able to get around the controller issue. It's tell me about. I'll do videos on my channel about controllers and Microsoft controllers. I have a kind of a deep connection to it as far as that's concerned, because like to me that's the game that actually got me to get an Xbox, was Halo. So I'll put it to you this way, dude. I had a lot of friends that were in the military. So back in the day, when you didn't have live and stuff like that, you did big LAN parties, okay? And so everybody would carry their TVs, man. I used to carry my big 32-inch tube television, put it in my car, drive to the base, hook up with my boys over there, right? Then we'd run all these lines, right? So they had the barracks. So what we had all these lines just going throughout the whole hallway, man, and everybody was in a room. And, that's how you have your LAN parties and stuff like that. And that's how we had to play it. And I didn't think I would even fathom playing a game like that or even be interested in it. And after I had that first experience, dude, I actually, the very next day, I went out and I bought an Xbox so that I could get Halo. Right. And that's how deep it goes for me as far as Microsoft. When people ask me if I'm a Microsoft fanboy, I can't say that I am. I am a fan of their console because I find myself more of a Sega guy, right? Because there's things and experiences I had with Sega that I'll forever cherish, man, and I'll always remember. But Microsoft, I don't have that same connection. So there's very few things I can say, but that's definitely one of them, dude, because that was an experience that I'll never have again. For a lot of people, they won't be able to think of, have that same experience like we did. I'm not sure if you're in the same boat as me, but because we have live, and I'm not complaining, I think live is awesome. But, we didn't have it on that level like we have now back then.
Yeah, that's
true. So
true.
I think this is one of the reasons, talking about Microsoft and Xbox, where it doesn't have that fandom that other companies have, like people that will fight tooth and nail. I used to be that way too with Sega. That's why it's kind of interesting for me, because I don't get too upset about stuff when it comes to the Microsoft camp, but definitely I still I still represent Sega because that's where I find myself more. That's where I grew up in with their games and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm definitely there with you, man. I'm 100% with you, and touching on if being 100% honest though, Xbox, the reason we have online gaming to the extent that we have it now is because of Microsoft. With Xbox Live setting the standard. I believe it was summer of 2002 or 2003 when they launched Xbox Live, and it's been it's gone through many revisions, but it's been such a stellar service that everyone has been compelled to just hop on it. I mean, Sony held off for a whole console cycle. I mean, you had the PlayStation Online with the PlayStation 2, but it's limited to like a few games here and there. Then they eventually, like even with the PlayStation 3, I don't think they fully implemented it to the extent that Microsoft was doing it until halfway through the PlayStation 3's life cycle. And then Nintendo has completely held off on it. I think they're trying to bring it in this year. I think the end of this year with the Switch, but Microsoft has been the innovator of a lot of things, and you could even trace it even further back with the Sega Dreamcast, because with their online for the Dreamcast, nobody was doing that. I mean, hell, you could even take it even further back in Japan. They were already doing that with the Sega, the Sega Genesis? Because I remember there used to be that X-Band modem cartridge you could put in and put certain games in, and like Mortal Kombat and what. It was super limited. Like very few people could actually use the X-Band, but Sega influenced the market in such a grand way. And I feel like a lot of this generation, the only thing they know about Sega is, Sonic. And it's Sega so much deeper than that.
Yeah. Sega was always, it was kind of their greatest strength, but also their greatest weakness to me anyway, as a Sega fan. They were very innovative. They were very cutting edge. They always did stuff to push the envelope.
Yeah.
And that's why, as a Sega guy, it was easy for me to cross over to Microsoft, because Microsoft does a lot of the same thing. I know they don't get a lot of credit for it, but if you look at some of the stuff that they push, like you're talking the online component and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just things that they did that that innovated the industry, which was similar to Sega tried to do. Now the big difference between them, and this is a joke that I tell a lot of people, is because they didn't have, Sega didn't have the money that Microsoft does. So, because that's pretty much, it was like, live by the sword, die by the sword, as far as Sega is concerned, because they would push and innovate, and sometimes that they would get them in a lot of trouble, man, because it's still a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you look at a game like Shenmue, which was way ahead of its time, they in fact came up with their own acronym for it, which I'm drawing a blank on, man. Sorry, that's my age. But there was nobody doing that kind of stuff on that level. And Sega was always that company that was doing that kind of stuff. I remember me and my other friend talk about this all the time. I remember they're the first one that had like a virtual reality type game that was in the arcades. And the thing about it is I could never play it because the thing was like $1.50. So for a game, and at that time, we're still in the quarter. We're still in that quarter phase, man. Some places was going up to 50 cents, like if you played Dragon's Lair or Space Ace. That was the time when they started inching up them quarters, right?
Yeah.
But as far as I can remember, man, even with a lot of the cabinet games that Sega had, like the Dreamcast, man, some of the games they had that had the peripherals with the fishing rod, Sega Bass Fishing and stuff like that, or Marine Fishing, or House of the Dead. They were always an innovator, and like I said, I mean, that's why I think I find myself kind of transitioning to Microsoft in 2013, especially, because that's the only company to me that's pushing the envelope. And in a sense, the only company that can, because of the amount of wealth that they have. I mean, they're crazy. It's crazy. Like when this console war and all this kind of stuff kicks off between all the different, whether it's Sony, Nintendo, or Microsoft and their fans and stuff like that. I never really get into it. I just don't like the hypocrisy of it. I'll just mention that. But because I look at Microsoft as being on a different level.
Yeah.
Because of the sheer size of their business. They're a huge corporation. And that's why I kind of like them now, because I see the innovation just basically coming from their side of the camp. I know Sony has like a VR thing, which I think is actually pretty cool, if you like that kind of thing. But as far as everything else, man, the only people I see doing things is Microsoft right now. And that's probably why I ended up going with the system as hardcore as I am now with the Xbox.
And I'm going to say this, and it's probably controversial to a lot of people, but I truly feel like that the only two companies in gaming that are actually taking chances of creating new and, experiences are Microsoft and Nintendo. I think Nintendo, for them doing a lot of their unique experiences, it has to do with them being, a toy company, originally.
Right, yeah.
And I feel like for Microsoft, it's just the fact that they've always innovated. They've innovated. I mean, they basically revolutionized the PC industry. They've got, the corporate side with Office and everything. Like they're basically an umbrella of services, and it's just that they know how to constantly over and over and over just innovate and innovate. And I see Sony, I know a lot of people praise Sony and they're like, oh, they're the best in the gaming industry right now. But I look at Sony in a way that Sony has kind of plateaued in a way. I feel like they're basically like the PlayStation 4 to me is a lot of what they did with the PlayStation 3 is just we're not really innovating. We're just maintaining the course of what we know is successful. Whereas, Microsoft's taking chances like the Xbox Game Pass, which I think is phenomenal service. And I remember when, I worked with Microsoft, they were talking about it back then, and now they've implemented it, and it's amazing. It's an amazing service. But yeah, that's my my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, well, I know for Nintendo, man, I never had a problem with Nintendo or their fans, and one of the reasons why I don't is because Nintendo, as the company, and their fans as consumers and fanboys of their product, they know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the Switch, I know that the what was it, the Wii U?
Mm-hmm.
I had one for my kids. My kids played it, but they weren't really drawn to it, on a level like they were with the original with the GameCube, man. Because I had a GameCube that finally died. But I
Really?
mean, yeah. So I had every console system up until this new generation. Or now I just stick strictly with Xbox. And there's reasons besides just being a fanboy, dude. There's financial. You know what I'm saying? There's all kinds. We live in Hawaii, man. Living here ain't cheap.
Nah, so, not at all.
So I just go where I get more bang for my buck and the one that I like the most. But the thing that I always respected about Nintendo is that they know their consumer base, and even though they get, and it's usually from people Nintendo or not their fans that talk the most about it, like they wish they would do this and this. But Nintendo won't, man, and I think that's one of the things that make them, that makes them successful.
Yeah.
Because it's like, to me, when I look at them, they're happy where they are. They know they definitely know what they're doing, and their fans like what they do. Like if you're a person that don't like Nintendo because of what they do, then don't buy their product.
And it's that simple.
Yeah, it's that simple, and that's why I don't. I've never had anything with Nintendo fans. I mean, now on the Sony side, and I've done a couple of rant videos. I try not to do as much because, to be honest with you, I don't have a PlayStation, so I don't talk about them as much, right? But I'll speak on Sony in this terms because I used to be like a huge Sony guy, and I'm not talking for the PlayStation because I was more on Sega side, right, and an arcade gamer. But definitely for their electronics, man. And I'm pretty sure we're the same way, man. We kind of grew up with that. Sony was the electronics king. Yeah. So everything I owned in my house was Sony. From my Walkman to eventually my Discman, my cameras, my televisions, my sound systems, with the exception of Iowa. That's the only other thing I had that wasn't every other electronic equipment that I had. And I'm talking rice cooker. Everything was Sony, and the reason why is because of the quality of their product. And even though you would pay a premium price for their stuff, you knew you're buying quality product. Man, my CD player, I eventually ended up not using it because we were going digital. That's what killed it for me. It did not stop playing. And the kind of cool thing about it is I still have CDs, and it was one of the first that skip protection. So now listening to your CDs, you could turn it every which way, but the CD wouldn't skip because it had that. Sony, that's one of the companies that built that in there, so that because they knew a lot of people listen to their stuff on the go. And one of the problems with CDs back in the day is if you had to kind of sit still, right? Because if you touch the equipment just a little bit, that thing would just skip, and you could scratch it. But that's to me, was Sony at the height of their greatness, since they like to use the term greatness, and in all the movies and everything I consume from them, and I find out not so much so. And that's not me hating on them, but it's one of the. I tell you that story to tell you this. It's one of the reasons why I've gotten away from the game with Sony, because as you said, they were, dude, the amount of studios they had, the amount of games that they would put out every, I mean, if you had a PlayStation, dude, you were not thirsty for any type of game, dude. They had everything and anything on the sun, man. And the one cool thing about being a gamer back then is I had multiple systems and I like to play a whole lot of different games.
Mm-hmm.
But the Sony we have now is not that same Sony like you were just talking to. They're a different company. They're not that powerhouse. And one of the reasons why, which I try and explain this to people, especially on the Xbox side, the reason why Sony could do a lot of that stuff is because they're a big company. If they made a mistake, like you remember when they had mini discs, that didn't take off.
Yeah.
There's all these different divisions, like maybe a movie didn't do well, or maybe the mini disc failed, but they had Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in the theater. I think at one time they had like 9 or 10 movie studios under them.
Yeah.
And then, I give them a lot of credit because I'm a movie guy, as you know. So, if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't have had all the foreign films that we had, because they did bring over things like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and stuff like that. Stuff that people at that time wasn't used to doing. You'd have to go to or wait for something to come out on videotape, to watch stuff. But to me, that's when they're right at their zenith, and now they're just a whole different company. And we can get into the cultural stuff, I feel, as far as that's concerned. But I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And it's one of the reasons why I've kind of gone away from the PlayStation, especially after the PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 was my last console that I owned from them.
And I know, thinking about the PlayStation 3, like for me, because I had a day one 60 gig, and I feel like the price, the different hard drive sizes, I feel like Sony didn't really know how to capitalize on the PlayStation 2 because they did so well with the PlayStation 2. And it's like, how do we top that? And then they made a console that was so powerful, but yet hardly anyone could, program for it or make games run functionally well. Because if a game came out on PlayStation 3 and on the 360, your best bet was to just get it on the 360 because it ran like crap on the PlayStation 3 until like people eventually got around to understanding like how to program for it. And I kind of feel like, the PlayStation 3 could have run a little bit longer because I feel like a lot of the power behind it was never utilized. And I think a lot of that kind of processed over to the PlayStation 4. And I've also felt that it's just like, the 4 was just not the leap that it should have been. But, that's my thing on that. But as far as Xbox, I've enjoyed the original Xbox. That was my second console from that generation.
Right.
After the GameCube. And then I had the 360. I remember when I got the 360, I just almost exclusively stopped playing the PlayStation 3 just because everything was just so much better. As like the online was solid, the voice chat was so much good, the interface was quicker, and the games. It was just whatever you wanted, you could play. If you wanted, JRPGs, even though these days people complain that Xbox doesn't have the JRPGs, but like on the 360, if you want JRPGs, you had Blue Dragon, you had Lost Odyssey, Infinite Discovery, you had a lot of stuff to play. If you want shooters, you want adventure, you want the cinematic stuff, Xbox 360 had it all. And then when the Xbox One came out, like when I remember the day it launched, as far as exclusives, Xbox One was trashing PlayStation 4 for like the first 3 years of exclusives because it came out with Dead Rising 3, Forza 5. You had Rise, which I still think Rise was a good game.
Yeah, I love that game. I still play it.
And it's just amazing how this current generation of gamers, how they're just trashing. And that's another topic I want to roll into, but it's just amazing how people are hating on the Xbox now, and I feel like a lot of it does have to do with that 2013 E3 that really kind of damaged the public perception. Even though Sony is basically doing the same thing that Microsoft was doing,
Yeah. No, I mean, but they changed that really quick.
Yeah.
To avoid that. So here's the situation I have. Okay, I'm trying to be politically correct on this without getting too
Speak,
much into it. But I
speak your
mean,
mind, man.
well, okay, well, okay, well, I'll just keep it with Microsoft then. Every every gaming company, whether it's Nintendo, PlayStation, with Sony, Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft, right?
Mhm.
I'll even go back as far as Atari, man. Sometimes these guys end up feeling themselves a little bit too much, right?
Yeah.
And that's usually when they have their biggest failures. If you look over the console generations, right? How Nintendo was
Hmm.
king, and they didn't want to change from a cart-based system, and they were looking at doing disc-based. Then they decided to stick with the cart-based. And then you had with the PlayStation, with the with the PlayStation 3 and the emotion engine and all, and the emotion chip and all that stuff that it was going to do. I still remember that announcement, man, with those rubber duckies in the bathtub. I still remember that, dude, like it was yesterday. And man, with the Xbox One now. In defense of Xbox, since I am the Microsoft guy here, um, they might have been feeling themselves a little bit, but in my opinion, because I hear people say that a lot with them, and they might have been, especially when they had the dude that was ahead at the time. But the thing I see with Microsoft that they did is they didn't read the tea leaves. Um, they came out with a system that was the most powerful, where people were saying, well, they're not listening to consumers, and in my opinion, they did listen to the consumers. The problem is they read the consumers wrong.
Hmm.
Microsoft to me thought that they had a fan base. They thought they had a fandom, okay, and they didn't. They really didn't. People that ended up playing the 360 were people like me and you.
Hmm.
I was still a Sega guy, Sega guy to the core. So I didn't have the same affiliation or excuse me, the same affection for Microsoft that I did for Sega. And even to this day, I hate to say it, it's just like Microsoft is my new girlfriend, but I still think about Sega. You know,
Hmm.
my first girl, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's I think for me that's how it's always going to be. And for when Microsoft came up with that, because they saw that they sold so many 360s, that they were winning in the third party titles, that they were Sony had a hard run for a minute. I mean, they kind of evened out at the end of the console cycle, but it was too late. And Microsoft did something that a lot of people said they weren't going to do, and they actually became viable. But to me, Microsoft looked at it being viable as being okay. Now it's our turn. We're in the lead. We're in charge, and we got our people, and we're moving forward, right? Because if you look at what the Xbox One is, and I don't see a lot of people talk about it, Xbox One is just the Xbox 360 missing some features. That's all it is, dude. Me
Yeah.
and you both know, as people that own the 360, when I turned my 360 on and I looked at my friends list, this
Hmm.
is the first time even that I had over 100 people on my friends list. A lot of it, the majority of my friends list, thanks to one game, which was Left 4 Dead.
Hmm.
That's how I met the majority of my friends on Xbox Live. I got them because we all played Left 4 Dead together. But every time you turned it on, they were either playing something like Left 4 Dead or watching Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest. I mean, I would go down the list of things, and they were doing other things. They were doing things other than playing games. The majority of the people on my friends list. But when you're looking at the numbers and just looking at the numbers, just looking at the numbers and not getting the actual feel
Hmm.
of the culture and the community, this is where you make those kind of mistakes. Now I know that you're on your channel, you become a little bit political, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say something like to the point of if you look at our last election, right?
Hmm.
How people were blindsided. That's how Microsoft. To me, that's what happened with Microsoft in 2013, because they believed that they were just continuing what people wanted with the 360 and expanding it to their consumers, and they found out the hard lesson that they really didn't have that. And I'm talking like people like us, like if you're like I know we're into comic book movies and stuff like that, right? It's the
Hmm.
same thing if you go online right now and you see somebody arguing Marvel and DC,
Hmm.
you know. What Microsoft now Nintendo can be DC and Sony can be Marvel. What Microsoft is they're Boom Studios. They're that independent comic book company that people will mess with, but have really doesn't have that close fan base. Not saying that okay, I don't want to get any heat. Not saying that the independent, comic books people don't. There are, but I'm not on that level like Marvel and DC. These people will fight tooth and nail for their companies and their heroes. And Microsoft to me finds themselves as that odd man out.
Hmm.
And I think that's the horrible lesson that they learned in 2013. Because if the price was the issue, right? $399 compared to $499 to me is not a big price difference, especially if you're a gamer like we are. We know our hobby costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the price issue would matter to me if the PlayStation 4 was 250 or $299, and the Xbox One was 500, but that was not the case. But it just boils down to, and we can get into the hate stuff. I don't want to take up all your time about this, but that's what I saw.
No, man, good. Go ahead, because this is all organic conversations, man. It just flows, and I'm getting like I'm enjoying this part. So definitely keep going in.
Yeah, but this with Microsoft, and even to this day, I mean, they're trying to build up. There's a YouTube community online, but even amongst their YouTube fandom, man, there's a lot of and I'm deep into this, unfortunately. But there's a lot of hate in the community as well. I mean, people don't get along with each other in the sense that, as far as their opinions, which is fine, but I'm talking about what you consider as a brand loyalty.
Yeah.
Right. And Microsoft just doesn't have that, from my point of view. Anyway, your thoughts?
No, I fully agree. And I think, to add to what you were saying, I think they really did feel like they had a following with having Halo and Gears of War and Forza. I mean, definitely at this point, Forza is the dominant racing experience. I feel like it wiped the floor with Gran Turismo, especially sport. But, as far they felt that they had their key franchises that they could just fall on, people would buy. Right. And this generation has kind of shown that they don't care. They're like, no, we're not that loyal to you. We're just going to go back to whatever, Sony has. Like, oh, okay, and it's definitely something for me. It's frustrating when I'm seeing every time Microsoft does something, people are upset about it or they want to rag on them. They're like, oh, like case in point, Sea of Thieves, how, right. that came out and everyone's trashing it. And a lot of people trashing Sea of Thieves have never even touched the game. They never played the beta. They never played the full game. And it's just, to me, it's amazing. I'm like, how are you so adamant about saying that this game is horrible? You never played it, or it doesn't interest you based off someone else's playthrough. Like, what happened to the day? Like, I know when you and I were growing up, if, especially during the 90s and such, if you want to try a game, you could always go to like Funko Land or GameStop or Babbage's or whatever, and they'd let you play it for 5 minutes or so. You can get like the demos from, PlayStation Magazine, whatever, and try out a game. Right. Whereas now it's like you don't even need to personally experience the game or the controls or anything like that. You see somebody else's, playing it, it's gospel. And I think that's really, a lot of people say that they want Xbox as a brand to die off, and they want this duopoly of Sony and Nintendo, and I don't think that's a good idea. Like, I don't think we need only two. I mean, there needs to be three, in my opinion, even more. I'd rather have a fourth one. If Sega wants to come back, another Dreamcast. Sega, if you're listening, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And don't get my hopes up, man. Don't get my hopes up. Look, I'll speak on this real quick about Microsoft. Like you're talking about that. Man, this is going to be hardcore, man. Probably get some hate for this, but I'm just going to be honest.
Go ahead.
If Microsoft leaves, man, this industry will die. If Microsoft leaves, this industry will die. It will not continue. Because right now, they're the only ones that are innovating and pushing things forward. To me, they're the only ones with the money that can do that. And they're the only ones with the infrastructure and corporate power to do so. I mean, I hate to put in, that's the only way I can put it, because right now, games, if Microsoft is the only people right now, the only company right now out of all of them that's pushing games in a different direction, whether I might like them or not. There's some of the stuff I do not care for. Like I said, I'm an old school gamer. But one thing I do as an old school gamer, I realize is that things have to change. Things change, number one, and things have to change. And right now, if Microsoft did drop out, man, I don't see anybody innovating. Because like you said, when it comes to Sony, man, they're not innovating.
No.
And in some senses, they really don't have to. I really don't have a bone to pick with Sony as a company. I have a bone to pick more with the gamers, us. Because of the messages we're sending to people, right? You brought up Forza. The reason why I think Forza and all these games are amazing is because I don't like racing games. I don't like racing games. The only racing games I like was like Daytona, right? Stuff that you played in the arcade because they're arcadey type racing games. And then I play like there's a couple games that came out like Project Gotham Racing and stuff like that that kind of blended Tokyo Extreme Racing. They blended that arcadey fun factor gameplay with kind of the sim aspects of it. But I
Yeah.
never did dive into it. And like I had friends that played Gran Turismo, and what I liked about it, I used to watch the replays because I thought it looked amazing. But I didn't want to spend time, dude. I'm not a gearhead. So I don't want to spend a lot of my time tuning stuff, and all that kind of stuff. Then a game like Forza comes around, right? Which has the best of both worlds, at least for me. So every year they come out with a Forza every year, and I'm buying it. And the reason why I will, attest to how great the game is because a guy like myself who doesn't like this types of games buys their game every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for them. There's people that buy the game that have problems with maybe they didn't have enough cars or they felt rushed. Everybody has their own opinion. But I'm saying, at least for me, as a person who never cared for these kind of games, can buy this thing, everything, and enjoy it. Especially the last one with Motorsport 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the most, to me, when I played that game, that's probably the most open-ended, trying to appeal to everybody, general audience Forza that they've ever done. And they've added stuff in there, like if you race, you can get outfits and stuff like that. They've gone the route of trying to make it. I hate to use the word generic because that's a bad word. I'm a loss for words right now, but they're trying to give it mass appeal.
Yeah.
Right. And again, like I said, I don't usually like these kind of games, but that's why I find myself playing it because there's always something to do. It's just not racing around a track, for 5 hours. You're actually trying to accomplish stuff. And to credit, like we're going to talk about the games that Microsoft's been putting out for the Xbox One. Again, if you don't like these types of games, understand. Don't play them, right? Maybe that's not the console you should be playing. I'm not trying to sell Microsoft on you, but what I will say is, as an Xbox guy, because I get this a lot, like I'm just a fanboy. And it's not me being a fanboy. I really do like their games. Like Rise Son of Rome. People might find it repetitive, right? I try and find, okay, not trying to be gross here, but because there's stuff that you can do in Rise Son of Rome as far as the kills and stuff like that and chaining combos that I try and find ways to do it and be creative about it. You know what I'm saying? Because if you play the game and you're in the arena, there's certain ways you can take people out. And I don't think I've found every single way to do it.
Yeah.
So when I play the game, I try and set up my kills to find out, can I use this item? Can I push this guy off a level a certain way? If I do this, will I have will the screen go in slow motion like it does sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or can I change, what's the longest amount of combos? That's not repetitive to me. That's fun. And I think Microsoft did that with the games to give their games replayability. Because if you look at games like Sea of Thieves, Titanfall, Rise Son of Rome, even Dead Rising, it has a story mode to it, but there's stuff that you could do with some of those weapons and taking out zombies that are just crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Microsoft's goal was. Again, to your point.
But no, that's completely right, man. And it's and that kind of has me want to segue into like some of the other stuff with Microsoft, like since you've been playing Sea of Thieves, like I want to get like your perspective on Sea of Thieves, a lot of the hate is getting, and the other Xbox exclusives and services they have like Game Pass and EA Access. Like, I want to get your perspective on that too.
Well, I know you talked a little bit about the streaming and stuff like this. And in this case, I mean, good or bad. In this case, I think it's really good. Streaming will really work out for Sea of Thieves. Like you said, I mean, we both have the game. To play it the other day. As far as I played with my kids, so I got that full multiplayer experience. And there was one person playing with us that wasn't part of our crew because there's only 3. And then the other day I finally got to sit down. I didn't want to talk about it on the podcast without actually playing a single player experience. So the one thing I'll say about Sea of Thieves, what it is, it's in itself an experience. This is something that a gamer has to experience. Now you can watch a stream to get an idea and stuff like that, but until you play that game yourself, I mean, I don't think you can truly understand what this game is. And I'm not saying that you might like the game. This game is not for everybody, right? Because there's parts of this game where you're going to take some patience. There's some stuff you got to figure out. It's not going to hold your hand and take you from point A to point B.
Yeah, it's definitely
there's some stuff that once you start playing it, you're going to understand about the game, and then you're going to know to do it. But the bottom line is, until you experience it yourself, dude, I don't think you form an honest opinion about it. You have to play the game, right? So now, if you're a person, like going back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, dude, the guys that they got it good nowadays, man, right? These dudes got it good, man, because they have so many avenues and options to go to, right? And even if the person's being biased or being a hater, you can kind of filter. You can use a filter, right? It's just like regular news, right? Mainstream media news, dude. You can use a filter to kind of
Mhm.
understand what you think is what's true or not, especially if you know yourself a lot, right? It's the same thing with gaming, man. But the options that are out there for you to form an opinion is amazing. Dude, back in the day when we did, dude, either you, like you said, you had options, but we were limited, and some of us didn't have that ability to go there or borrow from a friend.
Mhm.
Dude, you just had to base it on what you liked, the premise, what was on the back of that box, and you was rolling the dice. And sucks to be you if you bought a game and it didn't live up to your expectations. It was nothing like you thought it was going to be, right? That was just the way life was, and you just moved on, right? Sometimes you're going to get burned. In this day and age, with the options that they have, unless you don't know what kind of gamer you are or what you like, or you need people to make up your mind. I mean, there's nothing I can do for you. And going back to Sea of Thieves, if we're gonna encapsulate it in one word, man, it's an experience. And I only know that from experience myself because I've been playing the game. When I played it with my kids, yeah, I will say as a multiplayer experience, that's what it's kind of built for. You want to have fun because you're having fun doing stuff. For the first 45 minutes, me and my kids did was trying to figure out different things to do with the instruments,
Yeah.
right? And then, in fact, my son looked at me and he said, "Hey, Dad, do you think we could play these instruments underwater?" And I'm like, "Well, let's find out." So we jumped in the water and you can. And so
Mhm.
we spend like a portion of the time just running, swimming towards fish, seeing if it'll chase them off. And it's kind of cool because it'll play that muffled music that you get when you're underwater. So again, you can't get that until you start doing that for yourself. Even if you see it on a live stream, dude.
Yeah.
Again, you might not like it, but you watch people having fun because that's the kind of stuff that you're going to enjoy. It's a one-on-one, um, first kind of name basis with that game that you're going to get. And until you play it, dude, I don't think you'll feel it. Now, I'm not saying again for you to buy it. Maybe you don't have the money. I had Game Pass, so I was able to play it on Game Pass. But I also I liked the experience so much, I actually bought a copy for my daughter. So I bought two, one for Game Pass and one for my daughter to play.
And like speaking of Game Pass, like I remember when more people, I feel like it was a couple months ago where people finally started to warm up to the idea of the Xbox exclusive games going straight to Game Pass and the whole concept of Xbox Play Anywhere. And it amazes me that a lot of people now are warming up to that idea when Microsoft was hinting at it and even talking about it like a year ago, and even a year and a half ago, and people were just bashing it. And it just seems like anytime Microsoft decides to implement a new service or go a different direction with Microsoft, or I mean with the Xbox division, it just seems like people were so quick to just hate it. And it's really an unfortunate thing in my opinion. Like they're trying new things, and I feel like that's the one thing a lot of companies these days are not trying to do is how can we innovate versus how can we just stay the course of what we're doing. Like if you were to compare, and I'm going off topic here a little bit, but if you were to compare like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or not Shadow of the Tomb Raider, what was the last one? Rise of the Tomb Raider and and Uncharted 4 just felt like more of the same with a rope, whereas I felt Rise of the Tomb Raider just took the experience, and you had the jump scares, you had the survival element. Like they took chances. So that's kind of the way I feel like between Sony and Microsoft. Like Sony is just not. Microsoft's trying a whole lot of things, and it's a Game Pass compared to like Sony's, was it the Play Now or whatever, and you're just streaming
Right.
the games, and you're not really being able to play it locally on your computer. And if you have a horrible connection, good luck with that. But
Yeah. 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 Their streaming service. And that's where we go to the differences between a company. The resources that Microsoft has as compared to what Sony can do.
mhm.
Um, and again, I mean, if Sony's gonna do stuff like that, I mean, they do it in the preview of their own, uh, what they feel that they need to do as far as their system and stuff like that. So, if their fans like it, that's fine. For Microsoft, the one thing I like that they do is they're always going to push that envelope, whether people like it or not. A lot of people gave Game Pass a lot of hate when they first thought about it because they thought it was a streaming service. And the one problem I have with a lot of people on social media is they're quick to jump the gun
Yeah.
on what these companies are doing, especially Microsoft. And I'll put our own Xbox community on blast for this. because they do it too. A lot of the people I hear, it's great as fans. Again, me and you being fans of a lot of different stuff in pop culture, it's always great to speculate, man. It's something that we do. It's something like when we read comic books, man. You were at the comic book store, you hung out with your boys and you talked about stuff. This is no different. We're just going online with it. We're doing podcasts now. The problem I'm having is people, that think in fact, in your last podcast, you had man, I can't remember the guy's name. But I just watched it, but he's
in Duo, the gaming
yeah,
one.
so yeah, the gaming one, because he was talking about being in the industry. And there's very few people that know the inner workings of what's going on in the industry. A lot of it's speculation. Some people know more than others. Maybe they know an executive and stuff like that. But even then, you don't know what these companies are doing. So when you have something like Game Pass, dude, a lot of times, what we used to do back in the day, you just take it at face value. And then you'd be like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes from there. But there was a lot of people that were against it. Then there was a lot of people that was comparing it to Netflix. And then I did a video on my channel was saying, for the hate, I was like, well, let's see what happens first. And for the Netflix thing, I was like, slow your horses. Because for a general audience, you tell them Game Pass is going to be like Netflix. They're going to expect certain things. They're expecting Netflix like they have it now.
Mm-hmm.
And Game Pass is far from that. What Game Pass is maybe Netflix when it first started off. And you and me both know, man, because I think you were like me, man. We were in that beta program here in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And like if you're like in Ohio, man, you got that disc the next day. We in Hawaii, man. Sometimes you didn't get that thing for 5 days.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And basically we're beta testers for this thing. And in fact, when it went live, I actually canceled my subscription because it was so bad. Now, we're like 7 years removed from that, and you see where Netflix is and their streaming service and stuff like that. That's where I want Game Pass to get to. So when you look at Netflix now, like Marvel does special movies for them and television shows. Mm-hmm. Well, not movies, but television shows. They have a deal with Disney to get Marvel movies. They do a lot of stuff. I don't know if you're like me, man. I'm into Korean dramas and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. I can get a huge fix off of what they're producing. They actually work with companies in South Korea to produce content. In order for me to see Game Pass reach that full zenith of what Netflix is today, that's what I see Microsoft doing. Microsoft's going to have to do stuff like that. Like maybe and look, we're just spitballing here, guys. I don't want to put this out there like we're saying this is going to happen. But say Microsoft decides to drop money and pick up Sega as a company. We were just talking about Dreamcast, right? Imagine if Sega does an entire Dreamcast collection for Microsoft exclusively, bringing back the Dreamcast classics, maybe in original form, and also doing a HD remaster. And then instead of selling it as a compilation disc, they just drop it in Game Pass.
Yeah.
Right, and you're paying your $9.99 subscription, and they're like, hey, here you go. Here's a bunch of Dreamcast games for your subscription that you guys can play anytime. To me, that's when I see the evolution of Dreamcast. Not to get ahead of what we're talking about. I think Dreamcast. I think the monthly subscription service that they have with Game Pass is excellent. I thought putting Sea of Thieves in there was a stroke of genius because of the type of game that Sea of Thieves is. I had a bit of problem with my Game Pass Sea of Thieves initially, but I know they're having issues with the servers.
Yeah.
So I think Microsoft needs to tighten that kind of stuff up. And for some people, they're like, well, it's going to happen. Yeah, well, Microsoft, that's their bread and butter. So for me, they have to tighten that kind of stuff up. They can't give people a reason to hate on them, is what I'm saying. I know it's unfair, but that's just the reality of where we're sitting. And then, that's what they're experts in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm totally with you, man. I see Game Pass. It's amazing as it is now. Because there's a lot of games now that I don't have to buy right away, that I can test them out. It's basically the answer to what people were saying. Where's our demos? Where's our demos? Well, here you go.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I see endless potential depending on how if this thing takes off, and I think it is. I think they're doing good. I think adding CFDs is actually going to help it grow too.
Yeah.
But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, like, what is the direction that you see Microsoft going with the Xbox division, and like, do you see that being like I've heard a lot of people, like other YouTubers, like Dreamcast guy and whatnot, saying that they're gonna drop another Xbox in 2020, and I just really don't see that happening, especially since the X has come out and it's so much more powerful than everything that's out right now. I don't know. Like, what do you think? Some people have even said that they think that Microsoft is going to get rid of the Xbox console in general and just have, Xbox Play Anywhere on PC. Yeah. So, like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the key word that you got to remember is ecosystem. That's something that Microsoft's been preaching for the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say ecosystem, I mean it's just like this one big ecosystem where they have all their services, and it's you're a consumer. They want you to consume as an Xbox. They want you to consume as a Windows person, right? So I think eventually, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do scrap the console system and go completely digital. I'm not saying that I'm for that. I mean, I'm a console gamer. I still am, but I'm getting old, brother. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And time, like I said, times change and gamers are changing. That's what you're seeing now, dude. You see Microsoft put all this money into Halo 5 and Gears of War and Forza, right? They have pretty good returns on them, but then you see somebody drop something like Overwatch, right? Which has million, what 40, 50 million probably people playing that game, and then you have Fortnite, and then you have like PUBG, right? You have these types of games. So to me, Microsoft just wants to cover their bases. And the one thing I hope that they are is that they are flexible. Because I've given up on this whole fanboy stuff, dude, to be honest with you. This whole console war stuff to me, I'm tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to be honest, man. I'm selfish now, dude. I'm older now. I don't got time to deal with all these dramas and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm older. And I'm looking what's in the best interest of me. So whatever keeps Microsoft, whatever keeps them viable, whatever keeps them earning the money that they need to earn, whatever keeps them afloat, whatever they need to do, I'm all for it, right? Because every time you see Microsoft, they do listen to their consumer base. They listen to gamers in general. They listen to the industry. They're pushing all of these narratives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting this feedback. They listen to the feedback and they make adjustments. But then you notice that, sometimes that feedback they're getting isn't exactly what they thought it was because, it's that vocal minority within our communities, within the gaming community. They say they want this kind of stuff, but don't go out and support it. Right. So as far as moving forward, man, for me, it's whatever Microsoft needs to do to keep the Xbox division to keep on making games because I do like the content that they produce.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying again, I'm not a fanboy on this, dude. I'm saying that because I actually do play their games and I enjoy their games, and I also like the way that they're pushing the industry. I mean, they're going the politically correct route, man. I don't know if you saw I think it was at DICE where Phil Spencer gave this speech, which had nothing really to do with gaming. He basically gave his talking points and he basically gave his. I felt like I was listening to the Microsoft's mission statement. But even in that speech, even though to me it was a little bit more political than it needed to be, even in that speech they talked about as far as the direction of their company, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go all digital, that they're heading in that direction that you've been hearing people talk about. The main thing, as long as they stay flexible, they need to stay flexible. If they have to drop a console in 2020, I wouldn't put it past them. To stay competitive with Sony, yeah. I mean, they came out with the Xbox One S, and then now we have the X. I have both consoles, right? And it's interesting to me because I have a Day One edition Xbox One, I have an Xbox One S, and I have an Xbox One X. Mm-hmm. And for some people that were complaining, they're like, "That's way too much. That's not going to make sense." You know what, dude? It does. I can sit here as a person that uses all three systems. Of course, if I want the graphical fidelity, I play my X on my 4K television. Mm-hmm. I get the full experience. But if I can't get on this, or if my kid wants to watch like Crunchyroll, my daughter wants to watch Crunchyroll, man, she watches it on the 4K television because the anime looks amazing. Mm-hmm. Especially some of the newer animes that she watches, right? So I'll let her watch that, then I'll go down and I'll play her Xbox. And what they did was they actually, up-res some of these games to 4K that we have, and then they down-res it. I mean, they up it to 4K, and then they down-res it. So you're getting like the best picture quality, even though I'm playing on a 1080p TV. It's amazing, dude. It's like Microsoft covered all their bases, and you're getting the best of every world. So if you're asking me if they can drop a console in 2020, I would not be surprised, dude. They're already giving demos for that ray tracing stuff.
Yeah,
taking the graphics in video games, coming and making it as realistic as possible. Dude, the one thing about Microsoft, because they have the money, dude, and if you notice, man, even if they're being successful or they're making mistakes, they have this bad habit of just throwing money at stuff. Right? They'll just take stuff and throw it up against the wall until it sticks. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then fine. But again, to answer your question, in a roundabout way, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to me if they do that kind of stuff.
And it's one of the things too. Like me, I've got we were together when we got the Day One edition Xbox One back in 2013. Like right. I've got that one. I've got the Day One 2 terabyte Xbox One S. My wife ended up getting me the Gears of War Red One collectors for the One S. It was
Oh, nice.
Yeah, was that 2016? I think that's when that came out. Yeah, so she got me that one. I picked up the Project Scorpio last
That's a
year,
good
and
woman, bro. That's a good woman right there.
man, she
She
games.
buys it. There
She's
you go,
not.
man.
But it's like one thing I like about Xbox, and I can't seem to get this across to a lot of people. Like, it's just the infrastructure of the system and how it works. And I like how I can play a game, I can start a game on one console and then walk to the other room. Like, we got a Xbox in every room, and it's just
Yeah, I'm
because
the same way. Yeah.
it's just so convenient. I can start playing. For instance, the most recent game I'm playing right now is what was it? I'm playing. I'm playing uh, Monster Hunter because I just bought it digitally, and
Okay.
I'm playing that in one room. And if I decide I want to go in the bedroom or go in the living room and just chill and play, or if I want to play on her, because she's got an Xbox right over here as well. She has a day one edition as well.
Right.
And if I want to play on
Awesome.
hers, I can just take my disc or just download it to that, or if it's not already downloaded, just go over there and just
Right.
log into my account and just play it. And I'm right where I left off. And that's one of the things I feel Sony doesn't do. Like, if I'm playing a game on one PlayStation, I have to manually upload the data to the server that they have. There's only so much storage that they have for your save data, or
Right.
I've got to save it to like a flash drive or a hard drive and carry that physically to another PlayStation or download it. And it's just and that's one of the things I like about Microsoft is they understand services, like, and that's their specialty with Office, with the Windows as a platform, with Xbox, and especially with the Xbox Play Anywhere. Like, I've used that, and that's an amazing service. And a
Right.
lot of people have been criticizing that by saying that they should only, like, why should you buy an Xbox when you can get it on PC? Well, here's the thing: what's stopping you? Because
Right.
what's to say if you were to get an Xbox eventually, then you can just download it to there, because everyone doesn't want to sit in front of a computer and play on a mouse and keyboard. I work in you and I both probably work in front of computers all day long in
Right.
our regular
Yeah.
jobs, and it's like the incentive to want to sit in front of a computer and monitor, it's a little low. So
Right.
being able to just float between both, I think that's a brilliant idea that they came up with, and nobody else is doing that. And I've noticed Sony has tried to, now you can play the PlayStation Now streaming services on PC, and it's almost like Sony sees Microsoft or Nintendo do something. Yep, we're gonna copy that.
Right.
So
It's an industry. They chase after each other in a sense, right? They see what's successful with one. And it's just the way. Even though some people might not like it, there's other people that do. For me, I'm not a PC guy by any stretch of the imagination, but the one thing I do like about the Play Anywhere, because I do have Forza on my laptop, um, is that if I like my family comes over, right, and then I have nieces and nephews and stuff, and we all want to play. What I have with my laptop is another option, especially with Forza being a multiplayer game, right? Is
yep.
I have another option available to me, like a second screen that I can play on, Or if my son and me want to play together in the same room, I can jump on my laptop and he can, jump on my Xbox One X now. That's the one I have in my room now. But there is a time, there's nothing wrong with options, because the thing with options is that they're exactly as it says it is, right? An option to choose or not to choose.
Yeah.
And when I hear a lot of people complaining about this kind of stuff, that's why I chalk it up in the category of just being haters. They just don't like Microsoft, or they don't like that, because what's so bad about it? Now, if you get the system and it's not doing well on your PC, and it's the game, or it's Microsoft service, then yeah, more power to you. That is a legitimate complaint. But like you said, like we talked about other things, a lot of this stuff these guys have never experienced firsthand. Because when you talk to them, they're like not even Microsoft gamers.
Yeah.
So, but for me, yeah, I like the convenience of it, and I like the options that it affords me in case I have to use that second screen. I always think more is better. That's always been my philosophy since I was young, and that's probably never going to change anytime soon.
So. And I guess that just leads me into like my last question. And I know we kind of skimmed over it before, but I just kind of want to see if we can get some more meat out of it. And it's why is there so much hate for Xbox as a brand, as a console, especially with this generation of gamers and with this generation of YouTubers, because it seems that the YouTubers just have a very strong bias against Xbox, and it's very unfortunate.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I'm gonna get into trouble again, but I'll just be honest. It's multifaceted. At least to me, it's multifaceted, and I'm just basing this on just you know, I've done research on this a little bit, but I'm just basing on the fact that I've been playing my entire life in video games.
Okay.
And I've actually talked about it on my channel a little bit, not in depth as you have presented it here, which is very impressive, by the way. But one of the problems one of the things I'll say is because what you have now is a lot of brand name gamers. That's what I call them. They're brand gamers. So, and I'll say this because I know people that as a Sega person, I'll put this out there. I know people when I had my Dreamcast that wanted to play those games. They wanted it. They wanted to play. They come and play my games. And I'm talking all of them, dude. I'm talking Sega Bass Pitch Ed, definitely Power Stone, Ready to Rumble, right? The NFL 2K series. All of these games that Dreamcast had, they wanted it. But they wouldn't buy the Dreamcast. And if you remember, man, what was the tag for Sega Dreamcast? It was $99.99. Yep. And it sold at $199.99.
Yep.
That's the $200 console, man. As powerful as it was, and the games, how realistic the games, the graphics of that time was.
Arcade
the variety
perfect.
of that launch lineup, arcade perfect. The variety that they afforded us as gamers across the board. I mean, a lot of these guys I knew, man, they're gamers, and they wanted to play those games, but they didn't want to play it because it wasn't on a PlayStation, right? So and then if you remember, man, and this is where the term, I'll give you a little bit of history here. This is where the term vaporware comes from. Sony dropped the specs of this PlayStation 3, right? PlayStation 3? Yeah. So they dropped the specs. Was it 3 or 2? 3 or 2?
3, I think.
Was it 2?
Could have been 2.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it was 3, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they dropped the specs for anyway. Yeah, it was the 3. It should have been a 3. So they just dropped the specs of the PlayStation 3. Dude, no console, right? No games, not even a controller, nothing. They just talked about the specs and what that system was going to do. And people were like, they went nuts, right? And they were like, okay, I'll just wait for that to come out. And that thing was a year and a half off, I believe, before it came. Where you had the games and the system you had now. Right? And so that's where the term vaporware came, because they never showed anything. Then the following year, they showed, like, I believe, the design, talked about it a little more. Then you had E3, then they started showing off the games, where you had that Fireworks game and Quantum Dream or whatever, did that beat 'em up. But people were just so ready for that game and those games and that system that they forego the Dreamcast. That announcement literally killed the Dreamcast, because Sega was already having issues with what they did with the Saturn, okay? And they never recovered from it. So the Dreamcast had a successful launch. The ratios of titles sold to actually the console sold was solid. They're reporting, great sales. But then what ended up happening was that announcement came out from Sony, and the sales just stopped. It didn't stop, but it didn't build that momentum that usually happens in the console market, right? When you come with a new console, that you start building it and building it. And with the amount of power in that system and all the work they put into that, all the stuff that they did to correct the problems that they had with the Saturn, because the Saturn did have its issues, even though I love that console. Everything that they did wrong, they corrected with the Dreamcast. And by that time, it was too late, because a lot of people like to call, I'm going to get myself in trouble here again. A lot of people like to call Microsoft, the Xbox, the bro console. The real bro console was the PlayStation. And the reason I can say that, because number one, I lived during that time, and a lot of people that played PlayStation never touched a video game in their life.
That's
true.
In
fact, a lot of them used to make fun of me, because people don't know how I was when we was growing up, dude. You was a nerd. That was not cool. Not like now. You go and wear a Black Panther shirt back then, dude, you get your ass whooped.
Yep.
Yep. I see people dressing up in Black Panther, and I think that's cool now. I see people dressing up as elves walking out on the street going to our local Kawaii Con. That was not the reality, man. There's something wrong with you when you did that kind of stuff. You needed to grow up. It was a waste of time and money. So a lot of these guys now in PlayStation, because PlayStation made it cool, and kudos to PlayStation, dude. They actually increased. To me, they increased the size of gaming because that brought the general populace in, right? So a lot of these guys that were playing, man, I'll give you a quick story, man. One of my friends, dude, he used to make fun of nerds, dude, and he met me in my room one day. He's like, "Hey, man, you got a PlayStation, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, you think you can jump? Can we jump on Madden?" Because he wanted to play Madden, so I showed him how to play Madden, but he didn't want people to know that he played video games. But then it kind of became cool because of games like Madden, right?
Yeah.
And Final Fantasy VII. General populace, and of course generations were changing, but the general populace came on, right? And that's the second thing that happened, dude. PlayStation came in, it got huge, it increased the user base. The industry started growing by leaps and bounds. People that normally didn't play, the Wii did the same thing. You know, your grandma was out there bowling with the Wii, right? You know, there's people that wouldn't touch video games, and it started to change. But that all came about from PlayStation. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation you do now. I told you that story about the Dreamcast, but if you look at the Xbox in 2013, that's basically the same thing that Microsoft went through, that the Dreamcast went, because you have a rabid fan base of Sony fans who grew up on Sony that know nothing. And I'm talking just the gamers, dude. I'm talking in the media.
Mm-hmm.
All they know is PlayStation, dude. They're like, you know, that's all they do. That's all they know. So of course, you know, they're kind of biased toward that console. You know, and then when something like the 360 did successful, right? And then now you have the new generation launches between the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Those guys were all on board for the PlayStation because they just got their ass whooped. They got their ass whooped in the last generation with the 360, something they never saw coming, and they got whooped. And they didn't want that same thing to happen again. And so even though to me Xbox One had games that I know that they would like, games that were better, games that were more original, it didn't matter, dude. They stuck with PlayStation. And they still do to this day, dude. And that's to me, that's another bad thing about this gaming market, this gaming industry. That we're technically as advanced as we're getting in video games, dude. We're right now we're literally within our own gaming community amongst the gamers. Not really the people that develop it, because they're just trying to, you know, the gamers are the ones that drive the market.
Yeah.
Okay. So the companies are just going to give you what you want, but the gamers, we are literally regressing within our industry. And again, I'll go back. If Microsoft disappears, this industry will die. If we're only going to rely on Japan for our gaming, this industry will die.
Yeah,
it will.
And that's one of the things I'm really concerned about. And I've been thinking about doing a video on it because I'm looking at the gaming community and especially the YouTubers. I feel like they're really killing the gaming industry bit by bit by bit, and it's getting to the point. Like, for instance, with Metal Gear Survive, a lot of people who praised Metal Gear Solid 5 found pain, and you know the prologue game that came before it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the 2-hour demo, but so you know they loved they loved Metal Gear Solid 5's gameplay. They loved it, all the core mechanics, everything about it, except maybe the story or the presentation. But then when they came out and basically made Metal Gear Solid Survive or Metal Gear Survive, it's the same exact engine that people loved. Same graphics, same everything. It's just they're like, okay, what else can we do? Let's experiment and do something different. And, you know, for me, someone who enjoyed Metal Gear Solid 5 and played the new one, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of fun. But you won't hear a lot of these mainstream YouTubers that will admit to that. And it's just, oh, this is horrible. This is dumpster fire. The first thing they want to do is just hate it because that's the popular thing. Get some clicks, to get some views, get some subscribers. Yeah. And I don't think that they look long-term at what they do, because that studio that is pushing that made the Metal Gear Survive, they may be going under, and that's people losing their jobs. You know, that's company that may not be willing to take risk, and it sends a message not only to Konami but to other companies like, hey, we can't really take risks with the gaming industry, because if we do, we have people, the fanboys, we got the YouTubers, we got the journalists, we got people like Digital Foundry that, you know, they'll take any little thing, blow it up to 1 million, and we're done. And it's becoming cancerous to the gaming industry.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, I 100% agree with you, man. Because what's and look, I'll be fair. You know, I'll do them a solid. And try and be fair. The industry is changing in itself. The gamers are changing. You know, I have kids that play games now a lot more than they used to, and their tastes are changing. And their tastes are changing because of the games they like to play, the stuff they consume, as well as the friends that they play with, right? And again, once the industry started growing, and this went from like a pop culture type of industry to now it's been accepted by the general masses,
Yeah.
to the wider audience. And when you have that, dude, you have a lot of influencers um, that are different and probably will game and consume, and more importantly, consume the gaming a different way than we do.
Yeah.
So I agree wholeheartedly with you, especially with the YouTube stuff, because people do it as clickbait, right? It's a popular thing to do, right? It's the fastest thing to get, just to do hate. It's kind of a mob mentality, right? A lot of times, the journalists are just totally incestual.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even want to touch the. I mean, they're on every avenue. They're wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even listen to gaming media. That's how bad they are.
It's not like it
And
used to be with like Game Pro magazine where people actually played the games.
no,
It's,
that's what I was gonna. I was just about to say that when you said that. Yeah. No, because what it is, you remember getting Next Generation magazine, and
yeah.
when you read the authors of that did it, unless they brought somebody in that was more on the technical specs of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? But everybody appreciated it because we live in a more technically advanced time. When we were growing up, we had 8-bit, and then we went from 8-bit to 16. Ooh, Um, but back then, dude, what it was exactly like you said, dude. I read these magazines and stuff like that, and I actually knew the authors of the articles because they were also gamers, and used to follow them because, and you trusted their opinion because they were excited as us because they wanted to play the games.
Yeah.
And even though they might have been a fan of a console, one console or the other, it didn't matter. You just wanted to play a game because when we were growing up, you might miss out on something. And of course, for like me, I don't know about for you, but for me, it's all about the money, right?
Yeah.
Making the money to afford all that stuff.
Yeah.
But exactly like you said, dude, it's those people were not just journalists, they were also gamers, which is a far cry from what it is now. And I'm not opposed to people being that way because you can see it like sometimes when a person is talking, that they got hired because they're better on camera.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the look wise, but their presentation. Dude, I do YouTube. I have a hard time doing on my videos. That's why I don't really do a lot of them. Like when I look at you, you're very natural when you do it. It's easy for you. For me, it's a challenge. And so sometimes when you do a program and stuff like that, you need people that are good in front of the camera. I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're offering their opinions on something they know nothing about, that's where I think you got to draw the line. Just what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And people have no problems doing that now. Like you exactly said. People talking about CFPs never played the game. But they think they can form an opinion on the game just by watching somebody play it. And I think that's what's wrong. That's another thing that's wrong with this industry.
And this is the other thing too is like, and completely going off the Xbox topic, but thinking of Atari, they're coming back with a console, and the fact
Right.
that they even announced it, and you got people just making videos or making posts on Twitter and social media about how it's going to fail and this, and this. And these are the same people swapping down. Xbox was going to go out of business. They're not profitable. They swore Nintendo was going to fail with the Switch. They're the same people that want, Nintendo to kill off 3DS. These armchair analysts that apparently know so much about the industry more than the people who are actually in the industry in the executive meetings. It's amazing. Like if
I've read
Atari, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if Atari wants to come back and make a console, then that's just more options. Like, what's wrong with more options? And they're like, well, who's gonna play the games? Or it looks stupid, and then the price point. Well, until it comes out and you try it, you won't know.
Well, the thing that I've read the same articles or the same arguments. What makes me, not trust their judgment is that they don't think about it in terms of, well, what's one of the biggest shows on Netflix? Well, that's kind of broad. Sorry, but one of the biggest shows on Netflix. That is a bit broad. Sorry, I should have thought of that before you know. Which one, right? But one of the biggest shows on Netflix is Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why Stranger Things, besides the well written, the presentation, for a Netflix television show. It looks awesome. But it's the nostalgia factor. That's the driving force behind the success of that show. Is the nostalgia factor. When somebody talks to me about Atari and just writes them off, I'm like, well, you're not taking into consideration the nostalgia factor. You're not taking into consideration the cost behind what they're going to do. Their drive is not to beat Xbox One X. Their drive is not to beat the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation Pro or PlayStation 4 Pro or whatever, or the Nintendo Switch. That's not what they're going after. It's a gaming device, right?
Yep.
But again, when like you said, these armchair analysts and stuff like that, somebody like myself who doesn't even know anything about the industry aside of what I study and I read, because it's an interest of me, right? When I can see that, and yet these guys can't, that's what I find shocking. And that's what I find bad, in this lazy journalism. Again, what I like to think, I hope that they're doing it for clicks. Because if they're doing it out of laziness, then I would feel actually disappointed, way more disappointed. I would respect you more if you're trying to get clickbait, because at least I can understand that reasoning, besides the simple fact that you're ignorant about what's going on, and that's what it is. And if you notice, a lot of these publications, you have a lot of people writing about video games. This is how you know the industry has grown and that it's popular. You have people, publications that have no real business writing about video games, but they kind of have to because it's so huge. Right, so you have like your Vanity Fairs, right, or your Business Insiders, and stuff like that. Like if you write about gaming, you think they do it from a viewpoint of the money part, right? The numbers, crunching the numbers, the sales and stuff like that. But they'll talk about all kind of stuff other than that, like and what they normally do is they bring somebody from the outside to write an article, and that person's usually a Sony guy, right? I see that a lot with like a publication like the Wall Street Journal, dude. I would rather see you do something about Gamergate, right? Because Gamergate has the tinge of politics attached to it. And the Wall Street Journal is a financial magazine, but they're more known for their financial stuff as well as, the politics of things. They do popular culture, but that's not what you go there for.
Yeah.
Right? Unless it's for the popular culture and how it affects the overall culture, the social culture, which they can speak on. Right, but a lot of people don't do that. Then they're just writing these game reviews and stuff like that, and that's why you have all of this hate. So all they're basically doing is they're just borrowing from each other.
Yeah,
it's like groupthink, man. It's really sad. Like I could sit here and look at it, and you read it, it's like, oh, you're never gonna get a straight opinion from them. So that's why YouTube blows up, because at least you can come to a podcast like yours, right, and get different opinions. Like on the other podcasts that you've done on this channel, it kind of goes outside the norm of what people are talking about in the mainstream. Good or bad for you, man. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna get some hate. You're gonna get some love. You're gonna get hate.
Oh yeah.
But that's the reality of it, and that's why this what do they call that? The alternative media is becoming so huge, right? Because people are getting tired of being spoon-fed stuff.
Yeah.
Right, and that's one of the problems with the gaming industry, man. And that's why I like what Microsoft is doing. They're circumventing that. They have to do it because they're a big corporation. They have to they have to dot their I's and cross their T's. But then they're also coming directly to us as the consumers and the gamers.
Yeah.
And that's what they need to do, dude. Because I agree with you 100%, man. It is that bad, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, and if the industry doesn't shift away from that, because I feel like it's going to get to a point where those of us who do reviews, like we're not going to get review codes or review copies of games anymore, because they're killing these YouTubers and journalists are killing games well before the public can even touch it, and it's really bad. It's really bad.
It's the nature of the beast. If they have a big following, they want the more bang for their buck.
Yeah.
On the flip side, they can go the opposite route and praise a game that's not really good. It's a dangerous thing, man. It's dangerous waters to be in that they got to navigate. Speaking of Sea of Thieves, but I mean, it's a hard thing to navigate. It's something that they got to work on. Again, for Microsoft, being a Microsoft guy, it's something that I see that they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud them for it, man, because you just, you can't plant your head in the sand, dude. You're gonna have to take this on head. They have to take it head on, because this gaming industry, the gamers themselves, everything, all of this stuff is changing, and the old ways of doing media is not it doesn't carry the same appeal as it used to back when we were growing up. It just doesn't, dude. But then you got to try and separate what's actually viral from what is actual fluff, because there's money being put into this as well, dude. And it's I don't envy the person. All the business decisions they have to make, that I don't envy them at all. Because I think even with all the data in front of you, man, it's hard to, it's hard to figure out what the trends are, where things are going, especially in this digital age, man. The way we're able to access information so fast, it's scary, you know.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying again, with the problem with gamers is their inability to experience something.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, again, you know, not being able to do that and have those experiences for themselves, man, it does not bode well. It does not bode well at all. Yeah.
So I guess we can go ahead and get into the Q&A. We got at least 3 questions lined up from our audience. So we got one from Den the Avery. He asked, Sega Forever, vanilla Xbox backwards compatibility, should it be spread across all versions of the one? Which I think it already is.
It kind of is. I know that they're doing the original Xbox as well. You know, personally, if you're asking me personally if I want that, yeah, because I'd like to play some of those old games as well. I am a gamer at heart, so whatever games that I can get, especially some of those classics, I definitely would. It'll actually boil down to the engineering team at Microsoft and what they can and can't do. Also, you hear a lot of people, like I'm a Sega guy, you hear a lot of people talking about, well, if you know, if Microsoft buys somebody like Sega, then we can get some of these games. Another thing they have to look at is the licensing.
Yeah.
Because even though some of these games might be played on the Xbox, they might not own the rights to it. In fact, you know, Phil Spencer and the crew at Microsoft talks about that a lot. You know, it's the hurdles that they have to go through. Like for some of them, man, it's the music and the games.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you guys, if you're online as much as we, you know, as me and Mekel are, dude, you know, copyright is no joke. Especially when it comes to music, man. I've gotten strikes on my channel and I didn't even pick up on this stuff. You know, that's how bad it can be. So there's a lot of hurdles that they have to go through. But like, again, to answer the question, I think Microsoft is going to do that because they've had great responses with backwards compatibility. I think it's one of the things that's actually keeping them, you know, competitive with Sony because Sony has such a big lead as far as the console sales and stuff like that. That I think whatever Microsoft needs to do, I think they should.
Yeah.
Giving people options, you know, it might be that one thing that might get somebody to buy a console, but you can't leave anything to chance. I think whatever they can throw out there, they should, and I hope that they do. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Next question we got is from Triple M. He's asking, do you chaps think that the Xbox division has enough budget to make games from old IPs that they have, or even ones from Rare? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, actually. Look, Microsoft proper, I'll say this, or Mekel, man, do you want to answer? Or? I don't want to take up the whole thing.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Well, okay, just really quickly, Microsoft proper, yes. You know, they have a lot of money. From what I understand, as far as the internal and the politicking of the company, you know, it's not usually that cut and dry. The great thing of Microsoft is they have money. The bad thing is that they have money in the sense that they approach things from a business aspect. And as a gamer, that's something you should be worried about. Not worried about. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. As a gamer and a person who's looking to buy it, as a consumer who's buying the system, just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you're going to be, you know, I could say it this way: Microsoft would have no qualms, in my opinion, of getting rid of something if it doesn't benefit them, because I've seen them do it before. Right.
The Kinect is one.
And even look at their software.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't want to bring up some of that stuff, dude, because there's people bitter about that stuff to this day. This is another reason why Microsoft has the practice practices that they have. No fault of the current people in office right now with that's running the company, but that doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? So again, the way that I look at it and the things that they're doing as far as keeping Microsoft viable, it's not as simple as just cutting a check. It doesn't look like they're going to do that. And to be honest with you, from my point of view, with the way the industry going, just because a lot of people, you might get somebody sign a petition of 200,000 people to bring back Knights of the Old Republic, even though I think it would be successful, it doesn't mean that they're going to sell 25 million copies.
That's true.
And when you're competing with games like Fortnite, which not only Fortnite sells the amount of copies it needs to sell the game, and mind you, at least for Xbox guys, Fortnite is just a demo at this point. And I bought it on sale, but I forked over $30 twice, but I have to buy one for myself and my son so we could play, and my daughter plays, so I have to double dip. to buy the game. So I technically paid $60 for this game. That's a demo. That's not even technically complete, just to play that game on top of the stuff that we buy inside the game.
Same thing for like PUBG as well.
Yeah, PUBG, and then another thing with Overwatch,
Yeah.
right? So when people look at the console war between Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, you also have to look at the bigger picture. And a lot of these guys, whether it's Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo, as far as their original IPs and why everybody's complaining about original IPs, those original IPs have to compete with COD. Those original IPs have to compete with Fortnite. Those original IPs have to compete with games like Overwatch, where one person will buy your console, right, and play that game on their console, and will not buy any other game. Because old school gamers like myself, I can tell you, man, that some of the YouTubers that I hang with and guys that are in the Xbox community get pissed off about loot boxes. It doesn't matter to a person who buys loot boxes if you only buy Overwatch. You're not going to buy God of War. You're not going to buy Killer Instinct. You're not going to buy the new Madden. You're just going to buy Overwatch, play Overwatch, and spend all your money on the content that is Overwatch. That's the reality that these companies have to deal with.
Yeah.
And if you sink 10 to 15 million into an original IP and you only sell 2,000 copies of that, or you only sell 2 million copies, that's not a good investment. So
I mean,
that's the real thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Like the perfect example of that would be Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah, awesome game. If this was back in the last generation, this game would sell on any console.
Yep,
it would. I mean, there's the replayability factor. The gameplay, all the different options and stuff you can do with it. I mean, it's not repetitive. Some people might say it's repetitive, but there's just so much stuff you can do with it. And there's so many games that are successful that have a lot of the stuff that's in. So mind-boggling. Again, this is what's throwing a lot of these people off because they're basically following the trends and they're giving you what they think you want, right? Yeah. But for some reason, it hits for some titles, it doesn't hit for others. And again, a lot of people hate on COD. But the reality is it still sells copies.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why, hopefully that answers your question. I know it's kind of long-winded, but.
No, that was excellent. And that, I like that we got the fan engagement. We actually had 3 more questions. I guess we can just wrap it up after that. But
sure.
We've got let me see if I can find it. I just had it. I don't know why I moved away from it. Okay, so Dan the Avery, he's asking thoughts on Shenmue going from Xbox exclusive to Sony.
You want to go first, or?
Yeah, the thing I'm gonna say about this, it may be controversial, but I think Sony took a playbook from EA. They can't compete if Shenmue went to Xbox. Like they wouldn't have anything that's going to draw a lot of old school Sega fans over to Xbox more exclusively. And it's kind of like with NFL 2K, how it was just trashing Madden. The only thing they could do is just buy the rights to the license, kill off the competition. And I think when it comes to this, Sony knows that they don't really have successful Japanese games on the Xbox. And I think a lot of that has to do with a cultural thing for Japan more than anything else. So for them, it's just, let's put that on our platform. And it just kills off. Microsoft had an opportunity to trounce them with that, but yeah.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit, I got to be honest, man. And I'm really bitter about this. Like I own the Dreamcast.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the time for people to buy Shenmue was when there was a Dreamcast. That's when I needed you to buy the game. Because that's the game that Sega spent so much money on for their system. It was exclusive to the Dreamcast, and that was the game that they banked a lot of money on for them to turn the fortunes of Sega around. And what ended up happening is that wasn't the system seller. It sold, but it was not the system seller that a lot of people was expecting it to be, especially Sega, and to their demise. That is how bad it was. But for me, when they announced it, several things, I'm not really big on it because the original mind or the original goal of Shenmue was to be an 18-chapter epic of a game. So every chapter was supposed to be one game, and I'm talking like a full game. Not like one little, like how we have a lot of the indie games and stuff like that, which are awesome, but it was supposed to be fully realized games, each and every chapter that released. So there are going to be technically 18 parts to Shenmue. That was the goal of Yu Suzuki. Yu Suzuki is like my all-time favorite developer,
Hmm.
especially for Sega, even amongst Yuji Naka and some of the other guys that you had, because Yu Suzuki built Virtua Fighter, and that's my favorite fighting game. But the issue with it is now, I do not blame Sony for doing that because they're just being a business,
Yeah.
right? Sony is just doing what Sony needs to do to stay competitive. I don't think Microsoft would do it just for the simple fact that it doesn't look like Microsoft is investing. They're going in a different direction. If they do it, I'll be happy. That's fine. But again, the problem I'm going to have with Shenmue, even though Yu Suzuki is doing it, I hear a lot of rumors of how it's going to be. I'll wait till they come out, but it's not going to be the Shenmue, the number one I played and loved originally, and
Hmm.
it's not going to be the Shenmue that he originally had. That was his goal of doing. That Yu Suzuki wanted to present Shenmue in all of its glory. It's not. That's not the game that we're going to get. So
Yeah.
for me, it's kind of bittersweet because yeah, Shenmue is coming back, but what Shenmue are we getting? You know,
Yeah.
is it going to be in depth? How is it going to change? I don't know. And the fact that they had to pretty much beg, right, beg to get this game off the ground, I thought was pretty sad. I mean, it was hard for me to see that because this guy at one time in the industry was on the same level for a lot of the younger guys of Hideo Kojima. That was
Yeah.
Yu Suzuki. You
Yeah.
know, he was up there with Miyamoto at Nintendo. This
Yeah.
guy revolutionized video games both in the arcades and on console. The reason why the Dreamcast got a lot of the arcade perfect games is because of the work that this man did. One of the reasons why we have realistic graphics because that's the stuff, that's the technology he was working on. So again, sorry for being long-winded, but as far as
No.
Shenmue, yeah, I'll just have to wait and see what they're coming out with. But my hopes are not high. I'm sorry to say, dude. And to have a lot of people cheering this game on that I know never played it and never bought into it. When I needed them to, that's just another bitter pill to swallow. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse.
No, this is very true, and that's the kind of thing I'm seeing with a lot of people that are praising the Final Fantasy VII remake, and I'm like, I know a lot of people did not play Final Fantasy VII back in
Yeah,
1997, and I
and
as a go ahead.
no, I'm just going to add stuff. I'll throw myself under the bus because I didn't play it. I watched people play it.
You
I was
know,
one of those guys, so I can attest to that.
and like already for me, like with Final Fantasy VII remake, the fact that it's going to be three separate parts, each one full priced, and completely changing the combat from turn based to action RPG, I'm already turned off by it. I don't care how realistic it looks or how much it looks like the movie had been children. It's the fact that they fundamentally changed it, and it's not even the same game. So yeah, I agree fully with your point.
And that's the generation we live in, dude. I mean, remasters and remakes across the board, you know. And again, probably a business decision.
Yep.
It's less and you turn around that and you can't, you know, people will buy it, and that's just the way of the industry.
Yeah. So one of the last two questions we got from Triple M. He's asking, do you think that if YouTube could be the next alternative media to replace mainstream media, if YouTubers could do better, as in abide by their own rules and integrity that's in the gaming industry and thrive?
Go ahead, brother. I know you wanna. From the last videos I've seen you doing, man, I know you got some stuff to say on this bad boy.
Yeah, I have been going in on a lot of YouTubers, and I've gained quite a lot of hate from a lot of people, like Dreamcast guy, 8-Bit Eric, and whatnot, because I call a lot of bullshit on them and a lot of others because there's a lack of integrity with a lot of people on YouTube, and a lot of people get into YouTube, I feel, just for whatever they can get for free or for the clicks. It's not really for the passion of doing it. Like if you were to look at people like GameSack and others who may have started back when there was no money in it to where it is now,
Right? Yeah.
where there is money. and it's just about how they can make a quick buck. And that's a reflection on society as a whole now, with the lack of desire to want to work or to do things. And you know, that can go over into a political spectrum if we wanted it to. But I already think that YouTube has replaced the mainstream media in many ways.
Yeah,
I think social media as a whole, you know, with YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all that, I think it has replaced mainstream media because people are not going to Fox News. I know a lot of people hate Fox News. I like Fox News, but you know, they don't go to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or anything, or even, you know, gaming magazines or gaming websites. They don't go to them for information anymore. They go to YouTubers, they go to Twitter, they go to Facebook to get their information. I think that has replaced mainstream media. But as far as abiding by rules and integrity that the gaming industry currently has, and they thrive. I mean, right now with YouTube, the landscape is basically the wild, wild west. It's anything goes until YouTube cracks down on you, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add to this. I totally agree with you on this. I think it already has replaced mainstream media as well. And one of the reasons why is because, you know, the great thing about YouTube is that it is all over the place in some senses and stuff like that. But the bottom line is, and this is what we kind of touched on a little bit earlier in the podcast, the bottom line is the choice is yours.
Yeah.
You know, regardless if you like somebody or don't like somebody or agree with that opinion or don't agree with that opinion, or agree with it or don't agree with the opinion, the choice is still up to you whether you want to or not. Like, you could have somebody, like Mekel says, you know, you have somebody that likes Fox News, somebody that don't like Fox News. Well, there's people that do both on YouTube. You know, there's not a lack of choices. There's not a lack of options. And a lot of times when you give people if you give people the option to choose what they want, they usually go with the option to choose themselves instead of having stuff given to them.
Yeah.
And this is in the mainstream media news. This is in the gaming media news. You've seen all types of movements on social media just started based off of people having different opinions. And I think, like, again, I'll reiterate, I think it already has, and I think it'll continue to grow. I think you might be worried about, and something I think I agree that you should keep your eye on, is when these type of media that we're using now, social media, or you know, doing anything online and stuff like that, when things become groupthink.
Yeah.
That's the dangerous part, right? Or when they try and censor.
Yeah.
Like, I might not agree with a lot of people say, but I think I agree with the right for them to say it. If it's something I know, human decency, all right, guys. You know, because my level of, and then, you know, things vary. I'm not saying that they don't, but I think we can all come to a general consensus of what's humanly decent. But yeah, other than that, man, I mean, I say go all the way, dude. I've always been a guy that's like, I always want to hear people's opinion. Again, whether I like, because I want to know where people stand on certain things. And because when you know where a person stands, then you know how you can react or you know what they're thinking. You know how to, you know what you're gonna do and stuff like that. I hate to be in the dark about stuff like that, and that's one of the things that social media and online media and all this technology that we have now allows you to do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an older guy. You know, we grew, and Mekel's younger than me, but I'm an older dude, man. I grew up when you only had certain avenues to get information. Right, and some of you guys would die. I know some of you guys are younger, man. You guys would absolutely die if you went back to my childhood, dude. I mean, I can go back to where we only had 3 channels giving us information. You know, I put on YouTube now, man. I can watch something on video games. I flip the switch. I see somebody cooking out in the forest off of an open fire. You know, see some dude making candy out of his bathroom.
Yeah.
You know, there's everything and anything, and that's the greatness of it. Again, with the caveat of being watching groupthink and censorship is the 2 things I think that are the negative things that you need to keep an eye on. So,
and then, you know, to touch on the whole part about censorship, I know a lot of people get mad when YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, they crack down on it. A lot of that has to, I mean, there's a political thing behind that too. But, you know, you have to keep in mind that these are privately owned companies. So it's not like it's not an open forum. They're not bound to abide by, you know, our Second Amendment here in the U.S. First Amendment, actually, not the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment, but they're not having to be bound by freedom of speech. They can, if they don't like something, they have every right to do so, even if you disagree with it. So
I think,
no, go
yeah.
ahead.
But I think people have the main problem, at least this is what I've seen, and I have a problem with YouTube myself, is the inconsistency.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot
sometimes
of
their
that.
hypocrisy. Yeah. Because I do probably the best video responses I've got on my channel when I talked about my 4K television. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to showcase some of the video live. People were asking me to do that, and I've seen other people do it on their channel. But when I tried it, I got blocked. My stuff got I got a strike. So I stopped doing that, and then people would ask me to do those videos on my channel. I said I can't. I don't know why other people can and I can't, but I can't. If I do it, then my channel gets taken down.
Yeah.
Where I've come to the point now on YouTube where I kind of don't care in a sense, right? But I think people would be fine with a lot of these rules and regulations if they actually adhere to their own rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing, people never democracy. Right? What's good for one person should be good for the other person. And even some people will let some of that stuff slide, but it just happens way too much on YouTube. They need to really clamp down on that.
Yeah. And it just seems like they shift the goalposts with their policies left and right.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
they recently got, I think they admitted that they don't always notify people's subscribers that they may have a new video up, and they do push certain people more, and
Oh
it
yeah,
can be
yeah.
it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then that's why like nothing. The worst experience I had from it, I got a strike, and my channel got taken down because I did it for a video I never did. It was a video I never did, and I tried to contact them, and that's a nightmare in itself. So I just waited it out.
yeah,
Within a week, they gave me back some of my privileges, so at least I could get on YouTube.
yeah,
And then within a month, then I was up running back at full speed. But again, that's like Mekel was saying, dude. I mean, they are a privately owned company. So, and and people ask me a lot of times, well, how do I combat that kind of stuff? So that seems unfair and stuff like that. Well, become a creator yourself,
yeah,
or start the industry yourself. When it comes to video games, man, people will complain of, if you have a problem with a game like Sea of Thieves and felt like it wasn't worth your money, voice your opinion. But also, look at getting into game development, because some of people, do,
yeah.
but yeah, one more.
Yeah, the last one is from Riku Key 2. Do you guys fully enjoy your games? Of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not been one game that I purchased, especially on this next general console system, system of games. There's not been one game that I've been ever disappointed in. In fact, a lot of them have far exceeded my expectations. Now, I will be honest and put this out there really quickly for you guys, man. Like I said, I'm an old school gamer, so I've been around the block a while, so I know the kind of games that I like.
mm-hmm.
Right? I know, even with my movies, there's some movies I look at, I'm like, no, I'm not going to be interested in it, and there's other movies I know that I'm going to like. Um, so, I mean, it's just for years of playing and experience and just knowing myself. So I highly recommend that everybody does that as gamers.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the second point being is I've been surprised by some of these developers, and some of the stuff that they've been able to do with these games. I was like about 10 years ago, I was 1 foot out the door, man,
Yeah.
with gaming. The thing that saved me, and I'll admit it, was COD. And the reason why COD saved me is because I actually got interested in it. It kind of pushed my, what I like to do in Halo, took it to that next level.
Yeah.
Started playing COD, but the thing up reason why I could play that game is because I had a wife and 2 children,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not play video games. But COD, you could jump in, play a couple, find your little spots in between, wait for the kids to fall asleep. When my kid was a baby, he was all passed out. I had him right there. You can just jump in and out of the games, and that kept me in gaming.
Yeah.
And then with this next generation console cycle, I see them taking everything to the next level. Again, I am an Xbox guy. I have an Xbox One X, and I have the 4K full 4K experience on a cheap Hisense 4K television, no less. With what some people consider fake HDR, which is fine, but when I put that game on, that thing looks amazing. And right now, I feel it's good because we're in another iteration where gaming has the potential to move forward, both in the type of games they produce and the technology itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I am very happy with all the games. especially Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
Love that game. It's awesome.
That's one of the funniest things I wanted to kind of bring up, and it's not really a question. It's something that's been running in my head for a while because I see a lot of female streamers and gamers post on Twitter about how they need to have equality in gaming and all this other stuff, and I find it interesting how they view that there's not, when as a society for women to game was always looked down upon for so long, and it's like they're demanding equality, and I'm like, what is it male gamers have that you don't have? Like, it's that I've always found that interesting, that I'm seeing it so much. Like, oh, we need more of this, we need more female gamers, we need for more female leads in games, or female video game characters. And I'm like, we have a lot, but still, as a society, a lot of females just don't want to game. I don't know.
Well, I mean, for me, this is kind of unfair because I'm old school, right? So I grew up in a time when there wasn't girls that gamed. You know, I mean, it's not because they were forced out of the arcades or people were standing in front of the door forbidding them to come in. They literally laughed at you when you played games.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't the jock, you weren't the football star, dude. You weren't the popular guy. If you found a girl in the arcade, I'm not saying that girls didn't. At least in my circles, and I lived in an arcade, you'd see one or two of them, but they were usually there because their big brother was there, or there's some guy that they liked.
Yeah.
That was usually playing pinball and you know, was giving you a wedgie on your way to the bathroom. So that's the background I come. I think, you know, because I have that experience, you know, I think it's more level than it's ever been. You know, for a lot of the people that I follow, a lot of them are female gamers, and not because they show their cleavage or not because they're half naked, you know, and a lot of them are not. It's just I'm totally blown away by number one, they're usually very entertaining, and that's with any streamer that I'll follow, because they're not like me, so that's awesome. Number two is that they're actually gamers and they can game.
Yeah.
Not everybody. But I think the problem with what's going on with this movement to be inclusive with girls is exactly what Mekel was saying. If the numbers aren't there, you can't force it.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a million guys who are into gaming and only 100,000, you know, no matter how much you put all 100,000 into gaming, it's not going to change the perception of what it is. Is it good that all 100,000 are into it? Can they inspire other girls to get into it? Can that change culture? Yeah, definitely. But just because you want it to be that way doesn't mean it's going to, you know, it's interesting to me because a lot of people, and the problem I have with it, this is my personal problem with it, and this is my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to throw Mekel under the bus with me, but I always say this.
Do it. Throw me under the bus.
Well,
I'm more likely going to agree with you anyway.
No, I mean, I have a hard time with it because, like I said, I came up in this hobby, in this, you know, as a nerd into all this pop culture stuff when it wasn't popular.
Mm-hmm.
So the one place that's been the most open and understanding and everything has been popular culture. It always has been, whether you read comic books, whether you play video games. Because like how me and Mekel are having this podcast, we became friends over this stuff. And when we were growing up, I mean, I didn't know Mekel when we were growing up, but I'm pretty sure I had the same experience. When we were growing up, you met friends because they read X-Men. Or you met friends because they knew about the secret level, you know, skipping all the worlds in Super Mario World, right?
Or
you met these people because or the arcade because you could flip the board. Like I knew the trick to make the ships run out of bullets in Galaga, and I showed people that. But you had a camaraderie because you had a common. You had a commonality because you guys were all at the same interest, and it just so happens in pop culture with all of this nerd stuff, all these interests kind of cross-pollinated. So the guy who played Street Fighter 10-1 probably read Uncanny X-Men. You know what I'm saying? So that wasn't a far stretch. So the problem I'm having with a lot of people now is like you're coming into this culture and trying to change it when this culture was the one that started all this acceptance stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the most popular movie in the world right now is Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read the original Black Panther comic books, and that was social commentary of its time. And for something like that, as the commentary that I made on the social structure of its age, which was the 70s, for it to be alive and well and prominent now, and people accepting it, that shows how far along we've come.
Yeah.
And that's just within pop culture, popular culture. So that's another thing I have a problem with, man. It has to me, it has to be organic. And as a person, and Mekel, I don't play up my minority status by any stretch of the imagination. I don't really like to do that. But I'll tell you, as a person who grew up, right? Like I said, I'm an older guy, man. I've been called names and stuff like that. But I look at the generations before me; they had it a lot worse, and the generations before them had it a lot worse. So for me, and third, man, I mean, it's an interesting discussion to have. You're already in an area where this is. I'm not saying it doesn't have its problems, but you're already within a culture which already promotes this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents.
No, that's very true.
So look at all the people I actually look at all the people that gets the most follows. I mean, of course you have PewDiePie.
Yeah.
But he's nuts.
Yeah, he is.
But I would say across the board, the majority of the people that I know, I follow, and my friends follow are girls. I mean, overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. But
that's a good one. And again, I fully agree with you. I have one friend who's a streamer, and she's a female gamer, Power Level Amy, and you wouldn't even know other than looking at her name or her avatar that she was a girl, because she doesn't show her face on camera. She doesn't talk on her stream. She just plays video games, and she's a gamer through and through. PC, not Xbox, but PC, PS4, Nintendo Switch, old school gaming. She has like a shrine of games, and every game she has, she's played, and it's like you don't see that often. But that's
one
that's
of the
cool.
girls I follow on Xbox, man, is my girl Foxy. And I like watching her, man, because she's good at games, man. She has a great personality, but she's great at games, and that's why I will not play Gears of War with her. If she ever asks me, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna play with you, because I mean, I'm not good at that game, and it's amazing the amount of talent. That's like I was telling my son who plays basketball, and for girls, I go and watch my nieces play it, and my daughter, I try to get her to play, because I'm a huge basketball guy. I played basketball when I was in high school. But the level of the girls nowadays, this isn't the back in the day thing, man. Girls, they have the opportunity, and if they take advantage of it, dude. I mean, and I'm all for that. I am all for that. But forcing it, no, I'm not for it. I'm not for it. It has to be organic, man. That's my own thing. When you do this stuff like this, it has to be organic.
Yeah. All right, and I guess with that, we can wrap it up. Thank everybody thank all you guys for watching, being really active in the chat with the questions and everything. I want to thank Xbox All In for being on this 17th episode of the Kasanova Podcast. This is amazing, man. I love having you on here. Definitely got to get you back in. Why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, so YouTube, I am Xbox.
Oh.
If you want to follow me, if you're an Xbox gamer and you want to follow me on Xbox, I am Sega Forever, all caps, Sega, SEGA, the number 4, EVA.
Oh, I think we lost him. Anyway, what happened?
Oh, wait, did I lose me? Yeah, sorry about that. You lost me, right? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. So Sega Forever on Xbox Live. But thanks for having me on, Mekel, man. I think my battery's about to die. So it's on my phone. Thanks for having me on, dude. Yeah, I'll definitely come on for whatever podcast you want to do. If you want to talk politics, if you want to talk gaming, if you want to talk pop culture, whatever, man, I'm game. It's great. And again, man, congratulations, dude, on your channel and your success, dude. You're really, really proud of you, dude. You've been you put that work in, dude, and it's really paying off. So good job.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Definitely thank you for that. And man, I would love to do a political podcast with you. I know a lot of people. It's funny. Ever since I've started doing political podcasts and political talks on my channel, I'm shocked at the amount of people that have been receptive to it. I mean, I have a lot of hate for it as well. I mean, I get called a coon and Uncle Tom and all this other stuff. But I've got a lot of people that are like, man, I like that perspective. Like that's really a good podcast. Like I like the way you're coming at it. And it's basically, as I've said before, like I was a Democratic person by way of that's just what my family was. You didn't question it. And and I'm just in a point now where I want to understand what's going on because I'm tired of just it is the way it is and I have no control over my life. Like it's just my journey. But yeah, man, we definitely got to get in on a political one, and I'll be on your podcast at any time. You just give me a time, a date, sure, man, I'm there.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I definitely talk about it. I love all the stuff we're getting. We got Avengers: Infinity War coming up.
Yeah,
can't wait for that movie. I think I watched Justice League the other night for the 18 millionth time. And not just for their boys in there, man. Not throwing shade at Momoa, man. But he's a good Aquaman dude, but just the overall movie, dude. It's just a good time to be a nerd, man. Maybe there's a time I never would have thought any of this stuff was possible. But yeah, but definitely, dude, we can do that. We can do it on your channel if you want to. It's all up to you.
Man, I'm flexible either way. All right. And with that wrapped up, people, definitely make sure you go and subscribe to Sega Forever's channel. I got his link and everything down in the description below, so make sure you go and show him some love. I want to thank you guys for coming on and being so active in the chat, being just so energetic. This is really fun for me, being able to have other guests, other YouTubers, other commentators on the podcast. And I want to thank you guys for the success. Especially on iTunes and on Stitcher and TuneIn, we've got our biggest audience there. Where I think on iTunes we've just hit over. I think the last time I checked was like over 4 million listens within this year alone, and that's really? Crazy.
Wow, awesome.
And, we could just shift some of that over to the YouTube side of it. I would love to have that, but I like the fact that people are listening and they're enjoying it. Especially the podcasting. It's new for me, and I'm having fun with it. So
yeah, you're natural, brother. You're natural. So again, congratulations.
And it's funny because I'm actually very shy, and the thing is I've learned to just I'm nervous, but I just go with it anyway. And I don't know. A lot of my energy is my nervousness.
If it works, man, it works, right?
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for coming through, and thank you, Xbox All In, for being on here.
Yeah, been a pleasure. See you guys later.